إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam and everybody who is listening here, regardless of their faith, I greet you with the traditional Islamic greeting, Assalamu alaikum, and peace be upon you. We bear witness that there is no deity but Allah, and we bear witness that Prophet Muhammad is the last and final messengers. We ask Allah to send His peace and blessings on him, and him as in Prophet Muhammad and his family, like He has bestowed peace and blessings on Prophet Ibrahim and his family, and all of those who follow them and their families until the day of judgment. Let me start this khutbah today. Of course, as Brother Alim said, if you are able to go back to the masjid, and if the masajid next to you in your community are able to accommodate you, we highly encourage you to go there. Actually, you must go there, unless the masjid is not able to have you, or unless there are health guidelines, which the masjid always follow by your county or your state to prohibit you from going there. In these very, very difficult times that Muslims are going through, let me remind myself and all of you with a very, very short order from the Prophet ﷺ. It's a short hadith, but what Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told us is 2 words. That's it. Let me read it for you in Arabic so we can hear it, and then we'll translate inshallah. عن جارية بن قدامة السعدي رضي الله عنه قال: سألت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقلت: يا رسول الله، قل لي قولا ينفعني وأقلل علي لعلي أعيه. So Jariya, may Allah be pleased with him, told the Prophet ﷺ, he said, O Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said, tell me something that is useful to me. وأقلل علي means, and make it short. لعلي أعيه, hopefully I can really grasp it, like I'll be conscientious of it, so I can really, really understand it. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, told him, فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تغضب. In Arabic 2 words, in English 3 words. Don't be angry. And Jariya says, فَعَدْتُ عَلَيْهِ مِرَارًا, means I repeated that same request to the Prophet multiple times. كُلُّ ذَلِكَ يَقُولُ لِي, and each time I did this, the Prophet would reply to me, لَا تغضب, do not angry. And Jariya reflects, he said, ففكرت حين قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما قال فإذا الغضب يجمع الشر كله. When he reflected, he says, when I reflected on what the Prophet ﷺ told me, I realized that really anger kind of encompasses, it unites all evil. And this is why in Islam, actually, anger, and we'll talk about the types of anger and how it comes and how it goes, is usually prohibited. But if we think that all types of anger are prohibited, that is not really true. Because there are certain angers that are allowed in Islam, and there are certain forms of anger that are not allowed. But if we think about the pain, the harm that takes place between families, spouses, parents and children, siblings, family members, co-workers, members in the community, If we just think about the harm that anger does to us and does to humanity, we will realize why in Islam certain types of anger are totally prohibited. For it is truly a human nature to be angry. If there is anybody who's listening to this khutbah who never gets angry, let us have a talk. I would like to know, and all of us will have to know, what is the secret of your lack of anger? We all get angry. And there are times, even from an Islamic point of view, that certain angers are actually allowed. Actually, they are encouraged. If something is happening that violates the rules of Allah, if certain things are happening that are cause of injustices, why not get angry over it? We just should not turn violent over it. And I'll give you just an example. It's a beautiful ayah. If you listen, or a couple of ayahs, if you refer to Surah Al-A'raf, it is very funny because in Surah Al-A'raf, from verses 150 to 154, 4 verses, you'll find the word anger coming 3 times. And we learn from the anger from Prophet Musa alayhi salam, Prophet Moses. And at one point in time, he says, ولما أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولما رجع موسى إلى قومه غضبانا آسفا قال بئس ما خلفتموني من بعدي أعجلتم أمر ربكم وألقى الألواح وأخذ برأس أخيه يجره إليه قال ما إن القوم استضعفوني وكادوا يقتلونني فلا تشبت بي الأعداء ولا تجعلني مع القوم الظالمين. So this is what happens. Prophet Musa alayhi salam goes to receive the tablets from Allah. So let me translate to you what happens. When Moses returned to his people, full of wrath and sorrow, because people at that time had started worshipping the calf, he exclaimed, he was very angry, of course, at the people, and he was angry at his brother too. We're going to see what happens. He says, vile is the course which you have followed in my absence. Like, how could you do such a thing? He says, have you forsaken your sustainer''s commandment? And he threw down the tablets, basically the law that he had just received, and seized his brother's head. His brother is Prophet Harun, or Aaron alayhi salam, dragging him towards himself because he's angry. Like, brother, how would you allow them to do such a thing? Aaron cried, and he says, oh, my mother's son, because he's his brother. He said, behold, like, hold out, stop. The people brought me low, like they intimidated him and almost slew me. They almost killed him. So let not mine enemies rejoice at my affliction. Don't let them see that I'm dead now, and count me not among the evil-doing folks. At that time, when Harun spoke to his brother and explained to him the circumstances why he could not fight his people who were about to kill him, Prophet Musa alayhi salam says, قال ربي اغفر لي ولأخي وأدخلنا في رحمتك أنت أرحم الراحمين. He said, oh, my sustainer, grant your forgiveness unto me and to my brother, and admit us into your grace, for you are the most merciful of the merciful. Okay, so the ayah right after it says, إن الذين اتخذوا العجل سينالهم غضب من ربهم وذلة في الحياة الدنيا وكذلك نجزي المفترين. And so he told Harun, Prophet Musa would tell Harun, verily, for those who have taken the worshipping of the golden calf, you remember they wanted to worship a cow, their sustainer is condemnation. Actually, in Arabic, it says, سينالهم غضب, means Allah's wrath, like big anger, will overtake them in the life of this world. For thus do we requite all of those who do falsehood. Okay. And the ayah right after this uses the word anger again. ولما سكت عن موسى الغضب أخذ الألواح وفي نسختها هدى ورحمة للذين هم بربهم يرهبون. And when Moses' wrath or anger went down, it became still, he was calm. he took up the tablets, in the writing whereof there was guidance and grace for all of those who stood in awe towards their sustainer, because they were always remembering of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So human anger, as we see from the example of Prophet Musa, is not something that would always be bad. We just don't turn it to violence. Remember, he held his brothers. I mean, like, he dragged his brother. That anger should not happen. But being angry about what people do towards one another and towards Allah, that is an anger, type of anger that is granted. The Prophet ﷺ himself actually got angry. And if you go to the hadith, there are so many examples of him getting angry. In one of the things, as the hadith says, رأى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم نخامة في قبلة المسجد فغضب حتى احمر وجهه فقامت امرأة من الأنصار فحكتها وجعلت مكانها خلوقا. So the Prophet ﷺ saw a spit, like big thing, like a phlegm, in the qibla of the masjid, right where people lead, the imam sits to lead the prayer. Somebody had thrown or spit something very big and ugly and nasty. And so he got angry, because this is a sign of disrespect. How could anybody, regardless if they liked or hated Muslims, why would you spit on some place where people prostrate their heads up? And a woman at the time came and then cleaned it up and then made it good. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ma ahsana hada," how beautiful it is that, of course, she had cleaned it. She has cleaned it. And examples can go on, and I don't want to go so much into the examples of the Prophet ﷺ. But remember, in one time he made a judgment among two people. He did a ruling, and then he divided some type of property or wealth or something. And says, the hadith says, قسم النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يوما قسمة فقال رجل من الأنصار إن هذه لقسمة ما أريد بها وجه الله. So فغضب يعني the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم غضب حتى احمر وجهه ثم قال رحمة الله على موسى أوذي بأكثر من هذا فصبر. Okay, so when the Prophet ﷺ ruled in favor of one person, the person whose ruling of the Prophet did not go into his favor, the person from the Ansar whose ruling was against him or not to his favor, said, this ruling is something I don't care about pleasing Allah. Look, he's not saying I don't want the Prophet ﷺ. He said, I don't want Prophet Muhammad's ruling, which is inspired by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when this happened, the Prophet ﷺ got very angry, and then we know that his face turned red. But the Prophet, look what he said. He said, may Allah bless Musa, Prophet Musa alayhi salam. He was hurt by his people more, but he was patient. What a beautiful guide for us to say, and we'll talk about the solutions for times of anger. And there are, of course, a lot of times. Prophet ﷺ, sometimes he heard people, two of the Sahabas, remember these are the Sahaba, the closest, the people who were in living times of the Prophet. They were arguing over a verse of the Quran. Imagine. One was on the Quran, one they were also, in another instance also, people were arguing over the issue of destiny. Okay. And in both times he would walk out on them and get angry and yell at them. Okay, and of course he described like his face is turning red, his eyes would turn like red, just like everything comes out of him, just like sometimes described as a red pomegranate. Okay, and he would say, "Abi hada umirtum," is this what you were ordered? Means arguing over these matters related to an ayah or a concept in Islam. أَمْ بِهَذَا أُرْسِلْتُ إِلَيْكُمْ, or was I not sent this for you? I means like, listen to me, I was the one sent to you. إِنَّمَا هَلَكَ مَنْ كَانَ قَبْلَكُمْ حِينَ تَنَازَعُوا فِي هَذَا الْأَمْرِ عَزَمْتُ عَلَيْكُمْ أَلَّا تَنَازَعُوا فِيهِ. People before you, nations before you have perished when they argued over the issues of destiny, predestination. Is it something like, is it something that is already done on us? What do we do about it if it was already predestined? He says, do not argue over these issues. So the Prophet ﷺ also got angry. He was passionate, but never violent. He was never merciful about these, and that is very, very important for all of us. All right. So if this is what happened long time ago, whether with Prophet Musa alayhi salam or Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, do we have times today that we are living in to say that cause us to be angry? Just last week, we had a family slain in Canada. For what? For hate. Just for being Muslims. Is this cause for anger? Absolutely. Land that is occupied. People are killing each other in multiple places around the Muslim world, whether Muslims against Muslims or people who are not Muslims attacking Muslims. Or injustice overall, regardless if Muslims are committing it or are the subject of it or non-Muslim, it does not matter. When we see injustice and oppression, there is a reason for all of us to be angry. But there is not a reason for us to turn violent. But the type of anger that is prohibited in Islam is the type of the other one. It is the type of anger that causes husband or spouses among each other to fight and have domestic violence. It is the abuse that happens to the children, or the abuse that sometimes children impact or do on their parents. Among the communities, we go sometimes and we see people so angry. People get angry over financial matters. People get angered over people's backgrounds. These type of angers are absolutely not right. We should be angry about the people who get angry over these. We should be angry over a father who hits his wife. But a father who hits his wife should not he himself be angry under any circumstances. We should always be calm. And let me just, of course, we're going to talk a little bit about what science also tells us about anger, inshallah. But just let me tell you here, or share with you here, a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. Really, really interesting. It says, إن الشيطان يأتي إلى فراش أحدكم بعدما يفرشه أهله ويهنئوه فيلقي يعني الشيطان يلقي العود أو الحجر أو الشيء ليغضبه على أهله فإذا وجد ذلك فلا يغضب على أهله لأنه من عمل الشيطان. So it says the hadith is reminding us that Satan will come into somebody's covers, like, your bed. After the family has made a person's bed nice and comfortable. And the shaitan will put al-oud, some branches or some rocks or some dirt or something so that he can get angry. And when that person goes to bed, to sleep, he starts getting angry. And he starts yelling, why in the world is my bed not made up so perfectly? Why is this so dirty? Don't you wash it? And the Prophet ﷺ reminds us that he says, don't get angry. This is from the work of shaitan. Of course, there are many other hadith that give us such examples. One of them, that one of the most pleasures of shaitan is when a person, when one of the envoyees, the ambassadors of the shaitan, messes up relationship between the husband and his wife, and then they end up separating or divorcing, and that person, or not that person, the jinn will go back to shaitan, to Iblis, and he tells him, look, I was able to split a couple among each other. And shaitan, as the hadith says, he hugs him and says, you are my favorite, come sit next to me. These are, regardless how we take this hadith, it just tells us that times of anger are very dangerous to our societies. And while sometimes it is justified for big things, we should not turn it against us. Though if Islamic law does separate us and say, no, there are certain types of angers that are allowed, and there are certain angers that are not allowed, then it is also very important for us to be educated. Because when scholars make a ruling over a matter of anger, they need also to see what are the circumstances. And anger actually is a behavioral attitude. Something happens like this. It is very important for us as Muslims, not just to say that this person has an anger problem. That is not important. It is very important for us to look at anger also from a behavioral point of view, from a medical, from a health point of view. And really, anger could be caused by other things. There are certain things that prompt us to be angry. Sometimes we are depressed. Sometimes we're grieved over the loss of somebody or something, or an event. Somebody is grieved because some of our brother or sister or some humans around the world are dying. But also psychologists tell us that there are other medical conditions that cause anger. Not only depressions and grief, but sometimes people with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Some people with ADHD could end up having anger spouts. People with bipolar disorders. I mean, and you can go to the DSM. The DSM, this is the manual that psychologists will go through over what causes anger, whether it's bipolar disorder or things that are more specific or very, very specific. There's something called intermittent explosive behavior, IED. Not the IED, sometimes you hear about it in the news as the improvised explosion devices. That's not what we're talking about it. But it's interesting that the IED of explosive devices is the same terminology that they use, psychologists, for intermittent explosive device behavior and oppositional defiant disorder. There are many types of these and of this type of anger. If we really understand what causes behavior from a medical point of view, then we could at least address it, and we should address it. If somebody is sick, they have got to, Islamically speaking, go see a doctor. But sometimes we focus on the physiological aspects, as in like somebody has cancer or heart problems or whatever, or dermatological problem, that's something with their skin. But we do not focus on the behavior. Though Islamically we say, go see a therapist. There's nothing wrong about seeing a therapist, and let us not make this issue a taboo among the Muslim community. أقول قولي هذا لي ولكم فيا عباد الله استغفر الله لكم لي ولكم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه إلى يوم الدين. Okay, let's summarize what we said. Some anger is okay, some anger is not. If it is not, let us try to control it. If it's okay to be angry over certain things that violate Allah's limits and orders, but it's not okay to translate these into violent behavior. Having said this, the Prophet ﷺ gives us very beautiful advice, words of advice. Okay, so by the way, once the Prophet ﷺ was walking and he saw people fighting among each other. And he said, what is this? They said, well, this is fighting, just like wrestling. Here we have it. And they said, well, who's, he's asking them, and they said, the strongest is a person who beats the other one. And the Prophet ﷺ says, أَلَا أَدُلُّكُمْ عَلَى مَنْ هُوَ أَشَدُّ مِنْهُ. Do you want me to show you who is stronger than that who is wrestling? And of course the Sahaba looking for an answer. He says, رجل ظلمه رجل فقضم غيظه فغلبه وغلب شيطانه وغلب شيطان صاحبه. He said, do you want me to show you who's stronger than that big wrestler? It is a man who was oppressed, or who was, somebody had committed some form of injustice against him. So he was able to hold it. And therefore, and when he holds it, he's stronger than that stronger person that you're talking about. And he would have actually been, or he has won over shaitan, his own shaitan, because shaitan tries to come make us angry. And he has also overtaken the shaitan of the other person who made him angry. The Prophet ﷺ also tells us, those of us who get angry, if you are standing up, it says sit down. And if you're sitting down and you're angry, lay down. And that is very, very interesting. As a matter of fact, there is a beautiful study that was published in the journal Psychological Science that tell us that actually the front lobe, the left lobe and the right lobe of the brain, the left lobe will become more active at the time of anger when you're standing up than when you're sitting, and more active when you're sitting down, when you're laying down. But the Prophet ﷺ said it 1400 years ago when he said, إذا غضب أحدكم وهو قائم فليجلس فإن ذهب عنه الغضب وإلا فليضطجع. So the Prophet ﷺ said, if one of you become very angry while he's standing up, let him sit down. If anger goes away, that's great. If not, let him lay down. And science tell us that the position that we are in does affect how our brain functions and how we can do it. So let us all remember that there are certain things we cannot control, but there are certain things that are within our hand. If what is within our hand is something that is caused externally by external matters, let us always be patient and let us follow what the Prophet ﷺ told us. Sit down, lay down, do your wudu, take wudu, wash yourself with cold water, calm down. This day we say, and there's another hadith of the Prophet that says, if you become angry, the meaning of it, just be quiet, like be silent, don't talk. Take a walk. It's very easy. Open the door, just take a walk and stay away from them. We ask Allah to make us among those who listen His words and the guidance of the Prophet and follow it. And we ask Him to always listen to what Allah and His Prophet ﷺ told us not to do and stay away from it. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والأحياء منهم والأموات إنك سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات يا رب العالمين. اللهم لا تدع في مقامنا هذا ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا دينا إلا قضيته ولا مريضا إلا شفيته ولا ضالا إلا هديته ولا ميتا إلا رحمته ولا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا والآخرة هي لك رضا ولنا فيها صلاح إلا أعنتنا على قضائها ويسرتها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. We ask Allah to make us among those who listen the best of things and then follow it. We ask Him to forgive all of those who have committed sins against us. We ask Him to make us role models to those around us. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وأقم الصلاة إن الصلاة تنهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. أقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور الذي خلق 7 سماوات طباقا ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فتور ثم ارجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو خسير. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. ولقد زينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وجعلناها رجوما للشياطين واعتدنا لهم عذاب السعير. وللذين كفروا بربهم عذاب جهنم وبئس المصير. إذا ألقوا فيها سمعوا لها شهيقا وهي تفور تكاد تميز من الغيظ كلما ألقي فيها فوج سألهم خزنتها ألم يأتكم نذير. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام تبارك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام.
Thank you, Dr. Dany, for the reminder about how to control anger and how to use anger, and to Brother Haluk for leading us in the prayer. Uh, uh, there are no specific announcements today, but we would love to hear from you if you have any comments about the khutbah. And as Dr. Dany reminded everyone, and I mentioned also at the beginning, we encourage everyone to join their local masajid in prayers. Gradually, the Islamic centers are opening up. Some of the Islamic centers, masajid, do have limited capacity because they're still practicing social distancing. So we are continuing with this live Jummah, and we'll be doing some surveys among all of you to see how and up till when we should continue this. But until then, inshallah, we will continue, and we hope and pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep all of us in His best health and protection. And although Hajj again is going to be suspended for most of the world, we are getting ready to for the Hajj season, and we want to make sure that we will remind ourselves of this occasion and remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as He should be remembered during this time. And we will let you know about any activities that IslamiCity is doing during this time also, inshallah, later on. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.